Jamie, we are back.
Yes.
What is this, episode 6, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. And crazy last episode with David Jackson. A lot of the feedback that I've been getting is we just don't like ASU. And I'm like, okay, so if we don't have ASU, we don't have App State, are we a Newland, a Jefferson,
Right. Yeah.
somewhere totally off the grid?
Yeah.
But just to reiterate, Appalachian State is very important to our
Mhm.
local economy, whether you agree with that or not. And everyone is entitled to their opinion. So,
Right.
you know,
Yes.
we certainly celebrate that. Welcome back. I think we were both beaching it last
We
week.
were, yeah.
And I was at Cherry Grove. You weren't too far away, a little south from me. But
Yep.
I'm very excited this week because we're going to flip the script. So usually I do all the preparing subject matter, but today Jamie has decided that she's going to put me in the hot seat. What should we call this episode?
Oh, man. I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, think about that
I'll think about it.
before
Yeah.
we leave. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, James. So for today, I put together some questions that have been on my mind and the minds of others in the community. I got some feedback from some friends, and we have questions for you, James.
All right. And I am happy to answer them.
Okay. So first of all, let's start with the car wash question. Okay. So I think I counted, and in Boone proper, I think we have 6 car washes.
Okay. Do you want me to name them all?
Yeah, let's do it. And location.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, my friend Andrew owns 2 of them, right? So Bubbles 105, Bubbles 421 over by the high school, 5-star on Blowing Rock Road. Auto Bell is 4, right?
Yes.
Oh gosh, 2 more. Another one on 421, right there next to the site that Matt Vincent owns.
Yep, exactly.
And then the other one is, what is it called? Like Bride with Pride or right there behind the Starbucks. So
you got it.
6.
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. So what is going on with all the car washes? Is this a commercial real estate thing? Is this a tax? Why? And it feels like this is not just Boone. I feel like there's been an explosion of car washes in general everywhere.
Okay. So to answer that question, we have to look at the differences between these old car washes and the new car washes, right?
Yeah.
So the old ones were, you just drove up to them, spray them down.
Right.
The evolution of a car wash created what they called the tunnel system, right? So like 5-star and Bubbles on 421 are what they call a tunnel system. So this is the new evolution of car washes, right?
Yeah.
Is it a CRA tax thing? Partially, it's a tax thing because they get a huge amount of what's called bonus depreciation. So when they build one of these things, they cost so much money, and the developer is allowed to depreciate both the building and what we call FF&E. So furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Okay.
So you can imagine that there is a ton of money in the equipment that goes into a car wash, right? And so their ability to depreciate that very rapidly makes them very attractive as for the developer, right?
Okay.
Now, the other part of it is they generate a huge amount of cash.
Yeah.
They are little cash cows. And so they are depending on what type of operator or
Mhm.
credit tenant you have. And we're going to be talking about credit a lot today, the strength of a tenant,
Mm.
their financial backing. Um, and so depending on the strength of the tenant, again, that income can get capitalized and it gets sold on the investment grade market. So,
Okay.
and typically car washes are put in very, very, very good locations,
Right.
right? So, does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. So it's kind of just it's happening everywhere. It's not just here.
I don't think, uh, in looking at this question, is it happening everywhere? Yes, I agree with that. But more importantly, I think it's starting to slow down, right? I think it
Interesting. Okay. So the car
came,
wash boom is
yes,
busting?
it came way, way, way up
Yeah.
and now has crescendoed and I think is on its way down.
Okay. So at what point does a market just have too much of something? Like, is 6 are we good at 6? And who puts the brakes on that? Or does it just naturally fizzle?
I think it's free market economics, right? I think it goes back to any developer who's looking at the site obviously wants to find the best tenant
Mhm.
possible to generate the most amount of money. Um, so it, I think the free market economics it
Equalizes it.
equalizes it and says, either people are going to go find one that they like and go and support that um, or not go. So
Okay, last question on the car washes. Do you have a membership?
I do. I have a membership at 5 Star on
Nice.
Blowing Rock
Me
Road.
too. I go twice a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go once a day. Um, if the car's that's the first thing I did when I got back from the beach
Was the car wash?
was go to 5 Star.
Now, do you just do the car wash or are you also vacuuming?
Depends how dirty the car is.
I do both twice a
Okay.
week. I'm a little OCD about it.
Yeah, everyone. I tell Catherine all the time, a clean car is a happy car.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that saying. I'm gonna adopt that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so kind of in the same vein, we're gonna talk about hotels
Okay.
next. And, as you're driving into town on 421, there's that is it Spring Hill
Yeah.
Suites by Marriott? That's new. The one right there on 421 too when you're coming in, is it a Hilton or something?
Home to
Home
suites.
2 Suites, yeah. Okay. So, I feel like every time I look around, there's a new hotel that's just sprouting up.
Okay.
Is the hospitality market here in town actually strong enough to support all of these hotels, or are we overbuilding?
I think so. I think that a developer is smart enough to know that if they believe that that is the highest and best use of the land to develop it for a hospitality product, um, then that's what they should do. I think that it actually is to our strong suit. It says that our market is strong enough from a tourism perspective to support that people want to come to Boone and stay. Um, I know we looked at some of the Placer AI data, but the hospitality industry as a whole up here is very, very strong. And so I think it goes back to simple economics of supply and demand. Until that demand is met, then
Mhm.
there's going to continue to be the need for supply. But also, the other part of hospitality is this bifurcation between what we call flag hotels. So, like the Spring Hill Suites or the
Mhm.
Home 2 Suites or the Marriott or whatever
Right.
product is called a flag hotel, right?
Okay.
They are represented by this large corporate brand. The other part, and this is more particular in Blowing Rock, is these boutique hotels, right? And so when the Horton popped off in downtown Boone,
Yeah.
it kind of sent this. We've always had these bed and breakfasts or
Mhm.
smaller motel type assets, but I think after the Horton, people with means or developers saw this opportunity for, we want to create a much higher level hospitality experience, and there seems to be demand for it.
So, what would you say to locals who are wondering about all of these hotels sprouting up and the the lack of housing?
It If you aren't happy with something that's being built, then you had the opportunity to
Yes,
go buy the land just like everyone else and put whatever you want on it.
right.
But, land, Jamie, is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And so, in order to, because of this thing that we have called scarcity, right?
Mhm.
There's a very limited supply of it. And so, um, that creates a higher price. And so for these developers or anyone else to pay that price, they have to have a certain return. And they're going to figure out the best development to put on that site in order to get that return. It's called
Yeah,
free market economics.
right. Which is coming up in all of this, right?
Yeah.
Um, so how does a hotel project affect the surrounding commercial real estate? Does it help businesses nearby, or is there like what does the competition look like with the other hotels nearby? How does that all work together?
I mean, I think it depends on where it's located, right?
Mhm.
So for these boutique hotels, whether it's Horton 1850 in Boone, surrounding businesses in downtown are definitely appealing or getting a boost
Yeah,
from that hospitality. Same thing in Blowing Rock, where there's a cluster of hotels. It allows walkability, which is one of
right.
my favorite things,
Yeah,
right? The ability to park your car and on a Friday and not get back in it until Sunday.
yeah.
For some of these other hotels, it just depends on where they are located um, and what is surrounding them. But generally speaking, to answer your question, yes, it does help. You'll see a lot of restaurants next to
Mhm.
hotels. They obviously benefit, or quick service restaurants, fast food, Starbucks or coffee. Those, the closer they are in proximity, the more benefit that they're
So
getting.
do hotel projects actually bring in other new businesses?
They can, um, we outside of Boone, we see hotels that are
Yeah.
part of big master plan developments,
Mm,
right? So
yeah,
you may have a huge retail shopping center, and part of that master plan is hospitality, and it could be more
right.
than one hospitality unit, right? It could be
Mhm.
2 or 3 hotels in order to um, just creates that synergy that you're talking about.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Um, should locals worry that we're becoming more of a tourist infrastructure town than a community? And how is commercial real estate a part of that story?
I mean, my big thing has always been we need to bring goods and services to our community,
Yeah.
no matter what. That can be uh, national or it can be a local. Um, it. I think we do have to remain true
Mhm.
to who we are. Um, and I said at the beginning, we're known for 2 things, recreation and tourism, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me personally, I want people coming and visiting our community and spending time here, and more importantly, spending money.
Right.
Um, the tax revenue that's generated by every single visit, occupancy tax.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that the local doesn't necessarily see. But at the same time, I hear the locals very loud voice, especially on social media, that
Mhm.
says, we are being ruined. We can't go back to what we were.
Sure.
I think we have to learn to not only accept the change, but adapt to the change.
Mhm.
And again, everyone has the opportunity when a building or property comes on the market to, enter into the bidding process.
Mhm.
Um, you know, for example, this past week, Boone Town Council decided, I don't know if you read this in the paper or not, the
Oh,
Boone
no.
Town Council decided that they are going to take the remainder of the Bullock Farm, which is that
Oh.
huge, um, well, the farm originally was like 45, 50 acres, right?
Mhm.
The town has a good chunk of that in what's called a conservation easement that protects the lower lying land down by the river. So
Yeah.
then there was this like 25, 26 acre portion on the upper end. Um, and they've made a decision that they're going to sell that property to the neighbor, to Blue Ridge Energy, right?
Yeah,
And
okay.
a lot of people are coming out saying, well, that could have been housing. That could have been, um,
Mm.
even the mayor was like, well, this is better than a new shopping mall or,
Right.
um, it could have been a lot of things, but, you know, buyers and sellers are going to act in their timing for their needs.
Mhm.
And, if there was someone other than Blue Ridge Energy who wanted that site, they would have made it known,
Right.
but I mean, that site had a whole multitude of problems. The biggest one being grading cost, right? The ability to
Okay.
move dirt around and create a developable site. So,
So is Blue Ridge Energy gonna expand their
yeah,
office
they're
footprint?
going to use this new area for, expansion and lay down, right? They
Okay.
get a lot of material, raw material
Mm,
that comes in, and they've kind of, exceeded their capacity on the
that's great.
backside of their building, and
Yeah.
so they need that for expansion.
Cool. That's great. Um, so we've talked a lot about highest and best use. So if the hotel market gets saturated and these giant buildings are then left unoccupied, do they get refurbished or torn down? Like what happens eventually when it outlasts its
Economic life.
yes.
Um, in all the time that I've been in Boone, I have only seen this happen once, and that was with the Quality Inn at BB&T, right?
Yeah.
So that shut down, and ASU now owns it, um, and uses it as a dormitory. I think that that is a perfect example of what we call adaptive reuse. Um, I think the other part of it, though, Jamie, is that buildings themselves have an economic life,
Mhm.
right? And we've talked about how when the underlying land value exceeds the value is improved, then those buildings don't have um, should be torn down, right?
Yeah.
And the site redeveloped for more intensive highest and best use. For the most part, I don't ever see Boone being in a place where a large hotel is just going to fail or become empty.
Okay.
But if one did, I think that there are enough smart people in the community, or even outside the community to get it, and they would do a number of things. Right? They would either do this adaptive reuse, where it would more than likely be some form of housing, or um, they would reflag the hotel. So,
Mm.
um, just because it's a Holiday Inn Express
Right.
doesn't mean that it couldn't be a different flag. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes sense. I did think of one more,
Okay.
actually. Didn't wasn't the Scottish Inn where the standard
Yes, that got all torn
torn
down
down? Yeah.
for redevelopment for the
And that was pretty
standard.
old.
And I thought of one more
Oh, you
while
did?
we're talking. Next to, uh, well, where Gino's used to be, the water wheel,
Yes.
right?
Oh my
Um,
gosh, you're right.
wasn't that hotels? Hotel rooms,
Yes, and
right? And
now it's
then
those
Studio
Studio
West.
West.
Um,
Yes.
so, it has happened in Boone, but, uh, not I don't think it's gonna happen at a rate like it would in a larger market.
Cool.
You're
Awesome.
doing great today, Jamie.
Thank you. I know it feels weird to be on this side. All right. So I think most people in our community would say they want to support local business. They love local business. But we also have a lot of national chains. We have Walmart, Lowe's, grocery stores, all of it. Um, is that just the reality of life today? And how do you balance local love versus the chain gang?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think that we have to, again, understand that, as human beings, we all have needs and services.
Mhm.
We talked about in our retail episode the fact that we don't want to drive off the mountain to go to
Yeah.
Hickory or go to Winston-Salem to get certain things that we need. And yes, while we could get it shipped to us, sometimes, we need to see the thing or touch the thing,
Right.
right? As a consumer, right? Consumer behavior. Um, I think that Boone does a really good job of blending the two. We have a very vibrant downtown
Mhm.
that doesn't really have a lot of chain, right?
Right.
And even the one thing that I don't think most locals understand is that even chains operate from that franchisee franchisor model, and
Mm.
so the franchisee is typically still someone here locally
Yeah.
that's operating it. So I think in that way, it's the best of both worlds. Um, I think that we have a good balance right now. I do want to support, you know, all businesses. I am partial to our local business owners.
Yeah.
But, sometimes, that thing that you need just doesn't exist at, I like to think of something like New River Building Supply, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm doing a construction project, yeah, I'd love to buy locally, but sometimes they just don't have what I need and got to go to Lowe's.
Yeah. That's the reality, right? Is there a difference between how a chain tenant versus a local tenant looks on paper to a property owner? And do landlords prefer leasing to one over the other?
I don't think that there is a preference. I think the preference is more I would say two things. One is the operational experience, right? And
Mm.
so that usually comes from large corporate entities. They know how to operate
Mm.
their brand, whereas a lot of local operators just don't have that experience or don't have that capital that is needed. Um, you know, tell me the question one more time.
Is there a financial difference in how a chain tenant versus a local tenant looks on paper to a property owner? And do they prefer
Yeah.
one over the other?
The other thing I was going to say on that is just the credit of the
Right.
tenant is really probably one of the most important factors that the landlord looks at. And I think for our listeners, in my experience in leasing, it doesn't matter if you're a national credit tenant or local, someone is still guaranteeing that lease,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so whether it's a corporate guarantee or a personal guarantee, um, that document is coming into play no matter how much money you have.
So when one of these big national chains comes into a smaller market like Boone, what does that do to the surrounding commercial rents? Does it lift the whole area or does it start pricing out these smaller mom and pop shops?
I don't think that a large national credit tenant has an impact on rent. I think that rent is set by its location,
Hmm.
the characteristics of the space, um, parking, you know, I, the only exception to that is, in these big neighborhood shopping centers like a Watauga Village or
Right.
Shops at Shadowline. Um, I would say that the national credit tenants are having an impact on rents within that immediate area,
Hmm.
keeping them up. Um, but, you know, rent is set not necessarily based on the tenant, but based on the characteristics of a space.
So am I hearing you say that those larger shopping centers cater more towards those chain stores, and then there are other areas in town that are just more suited towards local business?
I think that certainly downtown Boone is catered towards local businesses. I think that the biggest problem that I see right now is just the lack of supply of space. So it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you're a national credit tenant or mom and pop. They're both fighting
Right, it
the
doesn't matter
same
who you
issue,
are.
same issue, which is there's nowhere to get. There isn't supply of space. So obviously, the national guys are more capitalized, have more bandwidth, have more money
Mhm.
to um, consider options versus the mom and pops. And sometimes their timing, really, what it all boils down to, Jamie, is the fact that these large corporate entities understand the timing of commercial real estate and can
Mhm.
move at a much faster pace than mom and pops might be used to.
Yeah. So, do you think that these local businesses have an advantage over the national chains in somewhere like downtown? Is that, or how, since they don't have that advantage, how do we have such a large concentration of locally owned businesses
Well,
here
I think the advantage to the mom and pop businesses is that they are here. They're boots on the
on the ground?
ground,
Yeah.
and so they see what um, might be becoming available, right?
Right.
And then when you parlay that with relationships,
Right.
right? I think that they are probably have the upper hand, um, because we are a community founded on relationships,
Right.
and strong relationships. The you know it is just very very competitive out there, and I think where the mom and pops struggle
Mm.
is in their ability to move at a pace that the landlord wants, combined with access to capital to build out the space.
Right.
Um, and if they're not building out the space, access to capital to buy the land or buy the building, right? So that'd be my answer there.
Do you think we have the right mix of businesses right now in Boone, or are we tipping too far one way or the other?
No, I think that we have a good mix. And when you say mix, you're talking about nationals versus
Yeah.
mom and pops. Yeah. What we don't have is supply. And I think
Mhm.
we would see more businesses either start or move or expand if their ability to get the right space showed up in the market.
So how do we fix that? Obviously, like we've talked about the limited availability of space and land, but do you just start going further out? Or is that just how it is? We just have demand, but there will not be supply because
I
of that problem.
I think it's more the latter. Um, in order for the prior to happen, my hope and my dream would be, that as a community, we really fix the infrastructure problem, right? So one of the most, at least to me, one of the most important components to new development is infrastructure, right? The water and sewer line, the
Mm,
utilities, and so roads. If we could expand that network, I think that we would see more new development. Um, you know, I think that opportunities are going to present themselves no matter what.
yeah. Okay. Well, if a local entrepreneur came to you tomorrow and said, I want to open X business on King Street, what would you tell them about what they're actually up against?
Well, I'm going to answer this two ways.
Okay.
Okay. So on King Street, I would tell them, uh, come talk to me in 3 years
Okay.
because that is the tightest supply.
Mm,
There isn't a whole lot of turnover. There's nothing available that I'm aware of. I mean, yes, we have space available at Rivers Walk, which is
yeah.
a project within the central business district. But outside of that, if you wanted to be on like King Street proper, um, the opportunities are few and far between, and there's very little turnover because, for the most part, high pedestrian traffic, most businesses do very well,
Yeah.
right? They're somehow downtown is one of those places where the economics, their rent economics, what they're paying
Mhm.
aligns with the business side, their ability to be good business owners and generate money and be successful. So, um, if we were going to say outside of downtown, um, one, this is a concept question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, you're going to love this. My big thing is childcare.
Mm, yeah.
I think that whether
Yeah. It's a
now
huge
we
issue.
have, I'm not throwing shade on Haley Hartley by any means. She is an incredible woman.
Yeah.
She's really smart. She has been the champion of childcare in our community for a number of years and will continue to be so. Um, but that is a segment where there is very, very strong demand
Mhm.
and very low supply.
Yeah.
Um, and I, one of the concepts that I don't think you and I have talked enough about is, this idea of competition, right?
Mm.
If you want something to decrease in price, there has to be more people providing that good or
Service.
service
Yeah.
in order for the price of that service to come down. So I would, when I was in Vegas, for
Yeah.
example, I talked to a concept called the Learning Center and said, "Hey, man, I really need childcare in Boone."
Mhm.
And again, the reason that a company like that is going to pass is it's not necessarily that there isn't demand, but the socioeconomic
Mm,
parts don't align
right.
with what they need as a tenant.
Yeah, I think that the childcare conversation is really fascinating because I think there's so many facets to it and it's so complex with, like you said, the socioeconomic makeup of our county, but then the large demand, and then just the conversation surrounding living wages, but then the cost to provide those, and just the larger economic conversation behind the conversation. And yeah. you can
Well,
really get into it.
it's like I said on our last episode, my biggest frustration is that wages are not keeping up with inflation. That
Right.
even as a business owner myself, we are really struggling to charge enough to keep up with everything else that is rising around us.
Which I think is probably a frustration for a lot of people
Yeah,
who are listening.
yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so this is kind of fun. My next question is about the old Hardee's on
Okay.
321. You know exactly what I'm talking about,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Right by the Convocation Center, and I think it's now about to open as the Mountaineer Tavern,
that's
if I'm
correct.
not okay. So I feel like that has just been a revolving door of businesses for years, ever since Hardee's closed. So what's going on there? Is it the building? Is it the location, which feels kind of like prime time spot? Is it the lease terms? Is it bad luck? Is it haunted?
No,
Tell
no,
us.
not haunted. A friend of mine from church actually owns that site. It is a true acre. It is, in terms of
Parking?
Blowing Rock Road, it is it's a 10 out of 10. It
Yeah.
is an incredible piece of real estate.
Right.
Um, I think that for the longest time, there was a struggle of, has that building reached the end of its economic life?
Mhm.
Should we raise that building and redevelop the site to its new or to a more intensive highest and best use? Or do we want to do what they're doing now, which is pour a ton of money
Mhm.
into a building to decrease its effective age and you know um, make it a newer building? It's certainly not the parking. It
Yeah.
has incredible parking. um, what what caused it to struggle in the past? Yeah, I think rent was a little ridiculous.
Mm.
um, but again, that property owner is trying to get a return on
Oh.
their on the underlying land,
Mhm.
right? So, um, and the folks that own that site are incredibly smart people, have been around that type of real estate for their entire lives. Um, you know, the folks that are doing this project now are very, very well capitalized. There is a
Mm.
lot of money behind this new concept, right?
So they've
Do you?
got a fighting chance, maybe.
I think so. Do you know a little bit about Mountain Air Tavern,
I
what
don't
they're
know
hoping to
anything about
achieve?
it, so please tell us.
Um, Mountaineer Tavern is designed, um, and it's my understanding, to be some local boosters from App State Athletics
Oh,
got together and
cool.
said, we need to um, raise money for NIL. Have you heard of NIL?
No.
Name, image, likeness. These
Oh,
athletes
yes. Okay.
um, that get some form of stipend or
Yes.
money to uh, compete in college. And so, as you can imagine, ASU um, doesn't have a big war chest like Alabama
Sure. Yeah.
um, or Tennessee
Yeah.
or one of these huge schools with huge donor bases. And so these donors got together and said, you know what, we're going to do this concept, and I think it's a portion of of their profit or money will go back into the
Oh,
pot for
wow.
NIL.
That's
So it is I think, a really cool concept to
yeah.
say, you're right there at the convocation center. So
Yeah.
like for basketball games and sporting events that are at the convocation center, or even, football games.
Yeah.
Um, and I think they have a good, operator, someone who knows how to operate a restaurant. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I want to say that they're going to do it. and it's going to
Gonna
be
do it. I mean, it's
successful.
looking great from the
You know,
outside.
I heard the end of June, which is
Coming up.
8 or 9 days away.
Maybe they can give us a little tour
Yeah,
sometime.
yeah.
That'd be
Field trip.
awesome. Yes, we like those. Okay, so another question going off of that. In commercial real estate, is there a term for a property that just can't seem to hold a tenant, or do we just
Well,
say,
I think it's called turnover,
okay,
right? I
yeah,
mean,
high turnover?
um, w- what I hear a lot of, and I'll use an example that most of our boonies will know is um, the standard, right? The
Yeah,
standard um, is a project that we represent as a company, but you know, and we are doing our darndest to overcome this huge stigma, right? Because from day one, the
mhm,
stigma has been, well, there's not parking. Yes, there is parking. There's
right.
64
You
spaces
just drive right in.
into the
Yep.
deck, and
It's free parking too.
and it's free. The lowest level and
Mhm.
then going up the ramp are 64 spaces for commercial tenants. This
Right.
works out to a parking ratio of 4.8 spaces per 1,000 square feet that the
Yep.
tenant leases, right? Um, our first restaurant tenant there was Cup Craze.
Yep.
They only left because they decided to go buy a building in Blowing Rock and operate from there. Um, the next tenant that we had was the Wafflery. Wafflery was set up for success.
Yeah.
They He was an incredible operator, but the reason that he left was that he was had too many irons in the fire trying to do
Mm.
projects um, off the mountain. I also think that labor had a part to play in that as well, but
Hmm.
for the most part,
What,
it had
like a shortage of
yeah,
labor?
that
Okay. Oh, interesting.
um,
Is that a problem a lot of business owners in Boone are facing? Or
I mean,
nationally?
I think that we just have to be cognizant of this ramp up to find labor. For
Mm.
example, David Jackson just had Tim from Boonshine on his
Yeah.
podcast, and Tim was talking about, well, in order to get this 60, 70 man crew for a company like Boonshine,
Right.
right? Their restaurant bar side. They are having to start for the summer, which is their busy season.
Yeah.
They're starting like in February, March,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
making sure that people are going to, stay up, have housing to
Housing.
stay up here for the summer and, be available.
Right.
So yeah, I think all businesses are dealing with labor.
Interesting. So when you drive by a building that has had high turnover, what do you see that your average person like me driving by doesn't see about that building?
I mean, I would just go back to the standard. Um, I think it's location specific.
Mhm.
I think that 9 times out of 10, Jamie, the underlying real estate is good.
Okay.
Is
So
and
is it just sometimes, like you said, with the Hardys, it was more of like a rent issue, and then with the standard, it was like a stigma issue. So it's not always rent. It can.
or operational issue,
Yeah.
right? The person
Oh,
operating the
yeah.
business or the business itself. Um, there are a lot of reasons, a business can fail. No one wants failure, right?
Mhm.
I think every landlord wants to see their tenants do very well and be successful, and wants to set them up for success, but they also want to get paid, a decent market rent for the space that they're offering the tenant. So,
Mhm.
um, you know, I I think that what most people in our community don't understand is that 9 times out of 10, the real estate is good. The landlord has set the tenant up for success, and it can be, other outside issues,
Mm.
operational. It could also be a global pandemic, COVID.
Right.
It could be a natural disaster,
Yeah.
Helene.
Neat.
We are still in, as a community, this effort of business recovery from a very traumatic event that we had.
Mhm.
Um, and I think because of that, some businesses in our community have failed. Some have rebounded excellently, but you know, it, I don't think that people in our community should have these blinders on thinking, oh, well, our community is so perfect, no one is going to fail.
Mhm.
Businesses fail, right?
Right.
And thus creates turnover. You know, the other part that I think listeners would want to know is that, landlords have the same rights as tenants,
Mm.
and so when a tenant defaults, it is, um, the landlord has rights
Sure.
to, you know, technically go after the tenant for the remainder of the obligation. Sometimes that happens and sometimes that doesn't. But, I think that it just creates this importance of making sure that as a tenant or as a business owner, you understand this legal document that
Yeah.
you're signing.
Which is another good reason to have a broker, right?
Yes.
I'm always gonna plug you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Um, okay, I'm gonna test you. Can you think
Okay.
of some other spots in Boone or the High Country in general that have the same reputation? And then tell us why you think they have that reputation, whether it's operational, concept, rent is too high.
That have
The
a
reputation of
stigma
high
of
turnover.
high turnover.
Yeah.
I can't really think of one off the top of my head. Other than what the turnover that we've seen at the standard.
Mm.
Um, I think there tends to be a little bit more turnover at a project like Highland Commons,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Ingalls
Yes.
Anchored Center, um, and I think that is more so to do with their parking lot than anything,
Their
and
parking
just
lot's rough.
um,
Yeah.
the ability to get in and around that site and then get to the tenant space. Um, the other part of that is what we call tenant mix, right? Um, who, what businesses are you putting next to
Next, yeah.
each other? For example, most of the landlords that I work with have made it very clear to me, hey man, we're just not going to do vape tobacco. It's not
Mm.
that
Yeah.
they and they are very good at paying rent. They generate a
A
lot
lot of
of money,
yeah.
but it does come with a stigma,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Um, is there a project in Boone or a place in Boone that sees high turnover? Um, for the most part, Jamie, no. And I would add this, that the reason that we typically don't see a lot of turnover is because there's not a, a lot of options for the tenant to go to.
Mm.
So they kind of get in a place where they're stuck. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, it does. Um, so is it just them being stuck, or is that a sign of strength for our town that there's not high turnover?
I think that it's a sign of strength
Okay.
that, for the most part, 9 times out of 10, business owners are structuring good deals between landlord and tenant, and they have the security, what we call the security of tenancy,
Mm.
meaning that both people are happy and um, they can operate the business, well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move into my next set of questions because I feel like it dovetails nicely. So, a lot of feedback that I've gotten from people that I've talked to is just about traffic
Mm.
and even just like off the cuff remarks about, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm so late. Um, Traffic was horrible, you know? And it seems like with new development projects, traffic just keeps getting worse. Um, is traffic part of these CRE conversations, or do you guys just kind of leave that to DOT and town planners, or how does commercial real estate look at traffic patterns, or do they?
Yes, we do look at traffic. The biggest segment of commercial real estate that considers traffic is retail, right?
Mhm.
The more cars, the better. Um, does traffic or traffic analysis play a part in development? Yes.
Okay.
Are we having that conversation earlier and earlier? Yes. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Um, I think when we first did the show, I told you about um, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Yes.
right? Buying this site on old US Highway 421.
Yeah.
Um, Even before going to DOT and getting a driveway permit, it was recommended to us that there be or recommended to the church that there be a 75-foot decel or acceleration lane as part of that project before you actually
Turn
turn
in.
in, right?
Okay.
Um, I think Division 11, which is the NCDOT office up here, has some incredibly smart people,
Mm.
and they are always keeping an eye on what is happening in the world of development. I think one of the reasons that the church had to put that decel lane in was because of development that's going to happen much further down the road, right? That and the retreat at Boone in that
Right.
neighborhood, right? A lot more people, a lot more traffic, and I think that what most people don't understand is that NCDOT is working in the public's best interest. You also have to accept what NCDOT says because they are a state agency. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't just be like,
You can't
"Oh,
disregard it.
that's not going to work for me." No, you can more than likely do what DOT says. Now, I think locally in Boone, um, the rub has in the development community has been well, these things, Jamie, that we call TIAs or traffic impact analysis,
Mm.
right? And so, you know, it's changing right now. So I'm not going to get into what it's changing to, but what I would say, most of the development that you've seen around Boone, um, it more than likely triggered the requirement for a traffic impact analysis.
Interesting.
And so what an engineer is doing is looking at all of the volume of traffic, um, intersections, time of day, and aggregating all of that data to say this is a change to the road or the
Mhm.
project that is needed to account for what is happening. Now, we have certain people in our community that want to be very argumentative and say, you know, traffic engineers don't know what they're doing or don't know what they're talking about.
Hmm.
I think that's very disrespectful.
Yeah.
I think that, that is a paid professional who has the licensure and
Mm.
expertise to solve that problem. We
Yeah.
need to trust them. Um, have TIAs been done and, NCDOT says, no, you don't have to do that, or yes, you do. Yes. I mean, ultimately it ends with DOT, whatever they say goes.
Mhm.
But for the most, and they have their own traffic engineers as well. So, you can get a TIA from the private side, and the same people that have that training and expertise work for DOT as well. I think that traffic is an important part to consider. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I would tell you and your friends this, Jamie, whoever asked you this question, is that it could be so much worse.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
could take you. I mean, there are people in Charlotte or Raleigh just sitting in their car for over an hour at a time to go 12 miles. That's
Yeah.
traffic. That's a problem,
Yeah.
you know?
My parents live in Northern Virginia and commute to DC, and we did that drive recently, and we're going into the city. And yeah, it was a Sunday afternoon too, and it was a nightmare. So we don't have traffic
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
for sure. Um, so my next question is, are there any developments that went in where you thought this is going to be a nightmare, traffic wise, and you were right?
I wouldn't say that I was right. Um, I, again, full disclosure, represent the landlord for the standard, and we want it to be successful, but that being limited by one in and
One
one
out.
out
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, a traffic concern,
Mhm.
right? Especially the people who are coming out of the standard and want to make a left.
Mm.
Um, because at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday, that's more than likely, and school's in session, that's not happening.
No.
Bowling Rock Road will, um, you block up all the way to Mountaineer Tavern, right? Um, because everyone's leaving campus at that time. Um, outside of that one project, I haven't seen another project in our community that I was like, this. Uh, uh, I would say probably the same for Rivers Walk in
Mm.
downtown. Again, that where that parking deck entrance is located and the way that people fly up and down that section of Poplar Grove Road for
Yeah.
me is, as someone who lives here and works here, is concerning, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, we have to learn to take the good with the bad,
Sure.
right? There's going to be some projects that um, the that hit the nail on the head, and others that I wouldn't say fail, but create more of a traffic problem. Um, you and I both know that we just don't make lefts in Boone.
It's true. Take the right and turn around. Yeah. So does bad traffic ever kill a piece of commercial real estate's value, or is that just not something investors are really concerned about?
I wouldn't say the word traffic. I would
Okay.
use the word access, right? So we
Access.
just
Okay.
had a deal die last week while I was at the beach
Oh no.
because of access. We, again, had this preliminary conversation with NCDOT, the way that a new road is going to come in, the way that the developer wanted to access the property combined with what we call additional curb cuts, right? The
Mm.
ability to get onto a piece of land, um, all came to a head when DOT said, "We're not going to give you any more curb cuts. You're going to have to do everything internally." And the developer was like, "No, it's not going to work." So, um, I wouldn't say so much traffic as I would access onto a site really does impact development,
So interesting, all of the terminology and the things that the average person has no idea is
right?
happening behind the scenes. I've never heard curb cuts before.
Now
But
you
these are
know.
the things that
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to work out in order for us to have these new businesses, which
right.
is wild to me
I
and
mean,
really
take
cool.
take 5 Star, for example, right?
Yeah.
5 Star is a site. It has 2 curb cuts. It has access um, from the entrance to the mall. That
Mhm.
is a cut. And then it has a cut. I really don't like the cut on Bowen Rock Road, to be
Yeah.
quite honest with you. I think that creates, if you want another example of sites that I think create a traffic problem,
Yeah.
that for me personally, I don't think there should be any reason why 5 Star needs that
That access.
cut
Yeah.
on Bowen Rock Road.
I
Because
tend
most
to
people that
agree
go to 5 Star, right, go in from
from
that
the
Boone Mall
mall. Yeah,
entrance.
I agree. Um, okay. So now we're gonna do a lightning round. And you just gotta do it short and sweet, okay? All right. Car wash number 7. Where would you build it and what was there before?
I'm not building another car
No, this
wash.
is just if you had to.
East Boone.
Okay. One business Boone desperately needs that a developer should be calling you about today.
One business in Boone that developer should be calling me about today, childcare.
Okay. Most overrated high country commercial real estate investment piece right now.
Multifamily, like apartments,
Most underrated.
industrial.
Mm. What do locals get wrong most often when they complain about development?
They don't understand that the land price is,
Mm.
through the roof, and that there's a very high barrier to entry, and that the developer is spending a ton of money at risk for that project.
Awesome.
So,
Thanks, James. This was so
oh,
fun. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be in your seat
I
today.
know. Well, I appreciate it, and grateful for you. And it felt a whole lot easier to do
This
it
was a
this way.
hard seat. I feel
I
like I need more practice too.
it's
So, round 1, guys, I'm
Yeah,
going to get better, I
yeah,
promise.
yeah. Chris is out of town for a couple weeks, so it
Oh,
may
yeah,
be a
that's
while
right.
before it's or pushed out.
Released.
But if you're still listening to this as we have our side conversations, know that we're grateful for you. Um, the support means a lot. Follow, share, and until next time.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.